episode of Autonomous Birth. Today we are joined by Victoria. Victoria is a mother as well as a doula that I found on Instagram. Then creeped on her page a little bit and then reached out to see if she would join us and tell us a little bit about her birthing experience. So that is what we are going to be talking about today. So if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you are, your kids. Well, how many kids you have. You'll go from there.
Oh, okay. No worries. My name is Victoria Macon. I'm a mom of four. Um, Currently, I'm in Newburgh, New York, but I'm originally from the Bronx, New York. So I'm from the city. So I'm still getting acclimated to, a little bit of a slower life and lifestyle. I'm also a first grade special ed teacher, also a birth doula, and I'm a wife. I'm a I'm a best friend. I'm a sister. I have a lot of titles.
Okay. Cool. So I'm on the wrong tab. Oh no, I dropped the passy. All right. So to start, with your first child, if you could tell us a little bit about that, the pregnancy, when it was like I don't know how old your first child is, how that pregnancy went,
Okay, no worries.
like if there was any complications, stuff like that, symptoms.
So my first child was, well, I got pregnant with my first child in 2007. Right? Found out I was pregnant with her. I definitely planned her. Me and my partner at this my partner, my husband right now. We planned her. I always knew I wanted to have kids ever
Mm-hmm.
since I was a kid, right? So with her, it was very pleasant experience for me. However, I was still like in my junior year of college, so I still was going back and forth to school, and that was like my only priority at the time. But generally, the pregnancy was very easygoing. I didn't have any morning sickness. I really didn't even look pregnant up until maybe 7 months, right? Then I started to expand in all kinds of directions. I
Right.
gained 50 pounds. I gained breasts, in which I was so proud of. I looked so good in my baby shower pictures. I'm like, look at you. You actually have something. You have something to breastfeed your baby with. Um, so that was dope. But I really didn't have any pregnancy complications with her. It was pretty standard, typical. Um, when I She was supposed to be born at the end of March, and it just happened that I was on my spring recess from college, and I'm like, it would be a blessing for me to have her now. I
Right.
already had like a nasty professor who was like, you can't miss more than 2 days of school or class, or
Mm-hmm.
you will have to be taking this class again. And I'm like, why would I have to take this class again if I can just give you my work online?
Right.
But he was really nasty, so I already knew that, all right, if I'm going to give birth, let it be during this time. So I believe, yes, it was a Wednesday, and I'm over here tidying up my home, minding my business. I was probably watching a birth story at that time, because you remember, like, TLC used to have those marathons
Mm-hmm.
of the baby story, and I used to like binge watch it. So I pretty much was probably doing that. And I just felt like these minor Braxton Hicks contractions, but it was like very consistent. It was like every 10 to 12 minutes. So I'm like, I think this is the start of me potentially having this baby today. So my partner and I was like, listen, I'm gonna give birth to this baby today, right? I was very certain. I'm gonna give birth to this baby today. You need to come home. So he had his mom take me to the hospital. I called my mom. So it's like everyone met at the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in this room. I don't have no idea what's going on. They're asking me same questions that my doctor asked me. They're asking, when was the last time your last period and all this stuff. I'm like, why is this necessary if I'm finna give birth? Like, I didn't understand why we have these same questions again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in that little room, that little holding area, until they can find you or determine if they're going to keep you or
All right.
not. They called my doctor. The doctor said, yeah, she's ready, blase, blase. My water did not break, but my contractions were still very consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, as I'm going through these contractions, I have a host of people in the room with me, right? I have my partner, I have my best friend, I have my mom, I have my dad, I had his mom, I had his brother, and like everyone was like talking, and I'm like, I I can talk for a little bit, but there were
Mm-hmm.
certain moments I remember my best friend asking me a question. I'm like, this ain't the time. This ain't the
Right.
time to have a full conversation, baby girl. This time. So eventually, like everyone started to leave. And I also just like remember like my father asking me, "What are you gonna name her?" And I'm telling him, "I'm gonna name her Amaya." And he's like, "What kind of name is that? You need to name her Esther." And Esther is my grandmother's
Esther.
name.
Okay, I was about to say.
Right, right. But you thinking what I'm thinking. I'm like, Esther is like a very, like, it's an elder's name.
Yes.
Am I right? It's an elder's name. We in 2008. I'm not naming my baby Esther. We already determined the name. This ain't the time to go back and forth about what I'm gonna name my child. So we kindly dismissed him, which meant that my mama had to go too. So he left, and my brother-in-law is there. Is like, I'm just gonna stay behind the curtain because I want to be here. I'm like, I'm sorry, sir, you're not about to see what goes down right now.
Right.
Like, what are you doing trying to be here for your own entertainment? This ain't entertainment for me. So I was able to do very well, and until like doctor came, like, you know what? How you dealing with the contractions? They're gonna get very intense. Do you want to get an epidural? The anesthesiologist is here. He's about to leave. If you don't make a decision now, then you're not going to really have anything. So I was just like, I was never planning on getting drugs per se, but I wasn't really against it at that time either. And I'm like, oh man, I felt like these contractions were going to get much more intense. And I was not going to be able to handle it. And oh my goodness, my help, my saving grace, this epidural, because the anesthesiologist is the only one able to administer it,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to be out. He's going to be gone. So I was just like, all right, I'll take the epidural. I get epidural, long needle, and they're telling you your partner has to leave the room. It's just you and the anesthesiologist and the nurse at this time. And they're like, keep still. And I'm like, how am I supposed to be keeping still if
Right.
I have contractions? If you're going into my back with this long, fine needle, like, it's not making sense of you need to keep absolutely, completely still. And they're like, oh, if you don't keep still, this can happen. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. So there's a lot of anxiety there.
Mm-hmm.
I got the epidural. Um, it was kind of, I felt a lot more relief as far as like the pain of the contractions. And then I'm like, I feel like I had to push, right? I felt like I had to do a pull.
Mm-hmm.
So the doctor came back, and I literally pushed her out with like 3 pushes.
Great.
So I literally I went into labor, let's say around 1 o'clock that afternoon, and she was here by at least 9, 10 o'clock at night.
That's really quick. Well, no, for first birth.
Right, right. So that was her experience, my experience with her. But
Mm-hmm.
after, like, I remember just being in awe, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, "Are you gonna breastfeed?" And I'm like, I'm like, I have a little chest. I don't really have much, right? And I'm like, what you mean breastfeed? I didn't even think this was possible, right? my ignorance, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, the nurse was like, I need you to try. This is the best milk for the baby. Just try. So I tried. She latched on quickly and right away.
Mm-hmm.
And it was painless for me. And I'm like, oh, do this.
Mm-hmm.
So only with that like support and that support from that nurse to be like, you know what, just try. And I actually did, and she latched on without a problem. It was like easy going with that. I remember like resting in the hospital, you know, them coming to check on you every 30 minutes after, and me just being annoyed because I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm tired, right? Like, why we gotta check the blood pressure and you know how much did she drink, and it was just a
Mm-hmm.
lot. But I remember just watching her like sleep, and the nurse came in, and she's like, "Why are you not holding your baby?" And I'm like, "It's sleeping. Why must I hold her if she's sleeping? I'm tired
Mm-hmm.
too."
Right.
So I just remember like feeling judged, and I'm like, so now I felt like I had to put on a show. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let me hold my baby so they won't say anything. So they won't think I'm not attached to the baby. And I'm like, I'm very much attached, right? We're developing that, but I don't want to hold the baby while she's asleep. I want her to get her rest so I can get mine.
But yeah, I completely get it. Like, I just had a baby,
Right.
and I want to lay down because also on top of that, who knows if she's gonna sleep when I get home? So if she's sleeping
Oh.
right now,
so
let me rest.
so when I like came home with her, like my best friend met me and she was there. It's coming up. She and helped like bathe her with me and
Mm-hmm.
like you know what I mean, diaper her, and it was just like I felt like good and relaxed. But I'm like, what I'm gonna do when everyone is like back to their normal routine? At the time, none of
Right.
my friends, and still kind of at this time, none of my friends have kids, my close friends. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what I'm gonna do when everyone is like back to normal and I gotta take care of this baby. Like I felt like I knew I was gonna be a good mama, but I just knew like that level of care I was getting in the hospital per se. Someone checking up,
Mm-hmm.
oh, do you need me to take her for a little bit while you go shower? I knew I was not gonna have that. So that, and I also knew like I had a couple of days until I have to be back at school. So that was to me a real adjustment will be
Mm-hmm.
just hold on. I just gave birth. I'm literally still like bleeding, but I have to go back to the hustle and bustle of going back to school and leaving her with, you know, her grandmother at the time. So to me, that was the hardest part of that birthing experience is knowing, it's just knowing that I didn't have as much time with her as I wanted. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, oh, that's kind of messed up, but yeah, I guess at the end of the day, you know, things still worked out the way it was supposed to.
Yeah. But that doesn't mean it wasn't hard.
No,
But
man, it
yes.
was hard because I'm like every time I would go to school, I'm thinking about her. Coming back, I would take no breaks. I
Mm-hmm.
literally, I remember waiting for the bus that first day, and I'm still having, you know, I still have the belly. No one offering a seat. That's how it is in New York.
Mm-hmm.
People ain't offering up their seats.
Hate New York. And it's just like nobody's gonna say excuse me, but also I get it because if I was walking in New York and I said excuse me 10 times, I'm not gonna keep saying excuse me.
Right.
So it makes sense. But yes, very on brand for New York. You're correct.
Correct. So no one offering on no seats. And by the time I'm like heading back to her, because I was
Mm-hmm.
breastfeeding, my I had a white shirt. Don't ask me why I had a white shirt on, but I had a white shirt. Like I was just leaking breast milk, and it was still
Mm-hmm.
fairly like springtime, so I had like a little sweater, but I was rushing to get back to her. So yeah, that was extreme. Like I had no
Yeah.
time. I'm like, oh snap, I got to get back to my baby.
Mm-hmm. The So you probably had like a year, not a year, what in the world, a month left of school before you got to the summer.
Say
Once you had her, sorry. So Because you said you had her in the March, so you probably had like a month left of school before you had a break.
Right, right. Because,
And that's
in
like,
college, May, we're good. Like, just come to finals and then we're good.
yeah.
So I had a little
Yeah.
bit of time with her in the summer, but it still wasn't, to me, sufficient, right? That's not how I envisioned motherhood. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be with my baby. And just
Yeah.
the fact that I had to leave her like a much earlier time, it was hard for me. I'm like, I'm sure it was hard for her. I'm
I
sure it
was
was
like, she
hard
was
for
running
grandma
hard.
too. But I know it was
But
like
we talk
hard.
about you right now, so
Right.
yes.
I was
Sorry.
literally, I remember like one day, her grandmother took her somewhere, like, and I was coming straight home, and grandma was like, "Oh, so I'm gonna go here," and I'm like, "Oh, like I want to come home to get my baby," and I literally started crying,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, "This is a lot.
Yeah.
This is a lot." So I completely understand that postpartum experience, but I literally had to keep it moving. I didn't really
Mm-hmm.
have time to like sit in it. I literally had to keep it moving.
Yeah. And then so the other part of that, so like I know now, like with my midwife, she told me like stay in the bed for 2 weeks. So also you did not stay in the bed for 2 weeks. So after that, did you feel like your pelvic floor and all that was not right because you didn't rest?
Oh, like um, go back.
Okay.
I need to go back to this part of the story because I forgot to mention it. Right? Sometimes you tell me the
Mm-hmm.
story, I'm like, hold on, I forgot this part.
Yeah.
Before, as my baby girl was crowning, right?
Mm-hmm.
During the delivery, the doctor was like, "Oh, so she needs some more space. I'm just gonna, show me the knife. I'm just gonna give you a little cut."
Mm-hmm.
And mind you,
Like as he's doing it.
literally, yes,
Ah.
yes, yes,
Okay.
just a little. And I'm just like, okay, like I didn't have no option. I'm pushing. She's already crowning.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? And boom. So after that episiotomy, I literally, whew, hemorrhoids. I was sore down there. I legit
Mm-hmm.
knew I was not the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to deal with that on top of course, like going to school,
Yeah.
hemorrhoids, and woo, that was a whole nother situation. Um, but yeah, that was hard for me. Like I knew my body was not the same.
Mm-hmm.
It felt, first of all, I did not want to engage in sex at all after that. You know what I mean? Because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like myself. This wasn't my body. This was
Yeah.
something completely different. Um, so I do like remember that. I'm like, okay, am I ever gonna be back feeling the same way? And that was kind of my worry. I think that was a part, yeah. And then like 6 months later, I found out I was pregnant with my son.
Mm-hmm.
I found out I was
You
pregnant
need
with
me?
my
Oh.
son. And girl, that was super tough.
Mm-hmm.
So my baby girl's 6 months, and I'm like, I felt a little hungry, so snack a little bit. And my husband's like, I think you need to take a pregnancy test. And I'm like, for what? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure I'm not pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
But he like forced me one day to like take the pregnancy test. I found out I was pregnant, and I'm like, oh my God, she's not even 1 year old yet. So immediately when I spoke to my doctor, he's like, you got to stop breastfeeding. And I was like, probably a real mess. Um, I was a real mess because I was like, how am I going to take care of two babies? And I'm still in school. So now
Mm-hmm.
I'm the girl on campus again, pregnant again. And I was one of, I was the minority in my college. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I remember my professor making another comment as I'm pregnant with my son, like, oh, you pregnant again? As if it wasn't obvious,
Yeah.
you know?
You got eyes. You can see this. You don't need to ask me these dumb questions.
Right. So I'm like, I remember that, and I'm just like, I think with my second pregnancy, it wasn't so, oh my goodness, this is amazing. It was just like, oh
Mm-hmm.
man, I'm pregnant again. Let me keep it
Yeah.
pushing. I'm keeping my
Mm-hmm.
baby. That's what I knew. And then like breaking the news like to my friends and my family. I think people thought I was lying. Like, what
It
you
was a
mean you
joke.
pregnant again? I'm
Yeah.
like, the doctor was right when they said be careful, be careful, because it's for sure you can get pregnant like immediately.
Why did so? Okay, rewind. The anesthesiologist. I hate that word. So if I said it wrong, it's because I hate the word. They're not there all day. Was he lying to you?
I know now that it was a lie.
Okay, I was gonna say because the hospital is 24/7. You're gonna need an anesthesia. You're gonna
I
need them at any point.
But this is like a part like now that like coming from like a birth doula perspective,
Yeah.
I knew I know now that it was just fear mongering to make you, make a choice, right?
Right.
You don't have no, you only have this much time, and the doctor's finna leave, and it was fear mongering to make you make a choice as if you didn't make the choice now, it was going to be a
Mm-hmm.
problem.
I don't understand what they get out of that though, because
Say it
if you
again.
know, like, what's their motive behind making you get an epidural? What's that gonna do for them? How does that make their life
I mean,
easier? I guess to say
it's the motive of
money.
money. Let's talk about
Yeah, yeah.
money. The biggest motive of money. How Because then I also know that when you get one intervention, it leads to a whole plethora of additional interventions. So if you get this, you're going to get this, and then this is going to
Mm-hmm.
trigger that, and now I'm going to give you this. And just making sure that they can control birth.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Like cutting you without saying anything bad that
Cutting
goes
me at
on.
that moment in which I
I can hear
had
you.
like, first of all, I didn't even know, like, it was another option besides cutting me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was done in a way that, oh, it's just gonna be a little bit. Here you go. You're not even gonna feel it much. I'm gonna give you something. It was like that.
Every time you say it, I cringe on the inside. I'm sorry.
Every time I think about it, I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that happened.
Yeah.
As if there was no other alternative. So
It's
I
not just a
still feel
simple
away
cut.
from
You have to heal from that. Yeah. You should. I get it. And so, what's the doctor saying you have to stop breastfeeding? Why? Why do they say that? I have heard that before, but why do they say when you get pregnant that you have to stop breastfeeding?
it. Repeat the question.
So you say your doctors when you got pregnant with your second child, the doctor said you had to stop breastfeeding. Why do they say that?
First of all, I know that to be a lie too now.
Everything's a lie.
I have no clue
I'm sorry.
about just making sure that the baby's not taking nutrients from from the unborn
Mm-hmm.
baby. I think it was rhetoric around that. But I know plenty of moms who still breastfed while they were pregnant. So I'm like, there's no real research to support the claim that you cannot breastfeed while
Okay.
you're still pregnant,
Okay.
especially if you don't have any um, medical conditions or concerns that would hinder a healthy pregnancy.
Okay. Um, all right, those were my questions. I was like, these two things don't make sense to me. Okay, so I know finding out about you said your second pregnancy was a son, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I know finding out about the second pregnancy was a bit different than the first, but was the pregnancy itself different? Like, was it rougher? Is that a word? Whatever. What was it
My
like?
second pregnancy was definitely completely different from my first. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Definitely different from my first because every month, first of all, I was extremely hungry all the time, right? I was craving fruits. He was a
Mm-hmm.
summer baby. So I'm like, the fruit carts were out, and I'm just like, here you go, thank you. Like, it was buffet for me. But I definitely felt like a pain in my groin area the whole entire pregnancy,
Mm.
even when I was not showing. It was just this nagging um, groin pain that would never go away. And I'm telling you, like, it changed the way in which I was walking. Mind you, I was
Mm-hmm.
not even showing, but I was walking, like, with my legs spread far apart, my hips spread as wide as it could. I even like asked for sex as many times in a day because I felt like that was the only thing that would relieve that pain. When I brought this up to the doctor, oh, it's normal. It's nothing to be concerned about. All of these
They
things.
say everything is normal. It's
Right,
like, no, it's
everything
not.
is normal.
Even if it is normal, that doesn't mean it's okay. Like, I don't want
Right.
to feel like
There
this.
was no, this is what you can do. Try this
Yeah.
stretch, try this exercise. It was none of that. I was like, oh, this is normal. Okay. And I just was like, all right. The doctor said it was
Mm-hmm.
normal. I blindly trust this dude. Okay, cool. It wasn't until literally after I had given birth to him that pain went away.
Like right after.
It went away like just in time. But let me tell you about my baby's. His birth was different too. So, first of all, the same exact situation. I had like I had like leaking amniotic fluid. So I'm like, all right, I think he's gonna be ready too. So I woke up, looked for a cab. We got a cab. The cab took us to the hospital, and got to the hospital. The doctor was there. They was like, okay, so your first one went this way. Your second one is going to be fine. So you want, an epidural again. And I was like, you know what? The epidural took those contraction pain away. Let me go ahead and do it again. I knew what the potential side effects would be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So was my I had the epidural, same exact thing, but this time once I received the epidural, literally from my belly button down, I went completely numb,
Mm-hmm.
which means I could not feel like my stomach, I couldn't feel my pelvis, I couldn't feel my legs. I legit needed help moving these um these body parts. So when it came time to push, it was extremely difficult for me to push because
Mm-hmm.
you already know that's you need to be one with your pelvis,
All right.
right, with your hips, and even feeling a sensation of you have to push. You actually got to feel that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
difficult when you're numb there and you can't feel anything. So I knew I had to push. I couldn't, for the life of me, feel me pushing. So the doctor is now yelling at me. You did this before.
Sorry,
Why
my
is this
face.
so hard? You know what I mean? And I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, I'm doing something wrong. And it was extremely difficult for me to push him out. And when it just took my daughter 3 pushes, it probably took my son 20, 30 pushes. I was pushing for a very long time. So by the time he did come out, I did tear a little bit naturally. So I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
cut again. And they told me to stop pushing at a certain time because the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck. So I stopped, they unwrapped the umbilical cord, then he was born.
Mm-hmm.
So now I have 2 babies. Two babies what felt like twins for me, right, at
Mm-hmm.
that time. And I'm just like, I think my main concern, even during pregnancy, is how is my daughter going to feel about him?
Mm-hmm.
And my other concern was, how can I love another child the way I love my daughter?
Yeah.
Like, because it just felt like, hold on, how am I going to love this baby as much as I love my daughter? So those were the top two, like, concerns that I had. And, like, I think I probably kept that second one to myself, right? Because that's not,
Mm-hmm.
so cool to say, like, how I'm going to love this second baby.
I think it's common though.
It is common, but not too
Yeah.
many people talk about it.
I have talked about it, but also that doesn't mean everybody talks about
Right.
it. That doesn't mean everybody. But that was definitely at the top of my mind because
Right. So
you
that
just
was
never
my
know.
concern. I'm like, well, as if I thought there was like an infinite amount of love that you can have, or
Mm-hmm.
infinite amount that a love that you can have, and I'm just like, no problem, I'll figure it out. Right? So taking care of this baby, and at that point, he was a summer baby, so I had time with him,
That's good. Yeah.
and I probably had one semester left of school.
Mm-hmm.
So I had that summer to like really bond with him. The sun was out, so I was outside in the sun, barbecues and all. My baby in his little sun hat, my girl with her sundress. And I'm like, we need a double stroller at this point because I got two babies.
Mm-hmm.
So that time was a little bit definitely more of a balancing act for me of making sure that my daughter didn't feel left out because now I
Right.
have this new baby, and making sure that my son, got what he needed.
Mm-hmm.
So even with him in babyhood, he didn't need for much. He just needed to be fed. Once
Mm-hmm.
you fed him, he was fine. And I'm like, I like this. This baby, oh yeah, this feed the baby.
Right.
But I also like realized like the different love that came from my son than my
Mm-hmm.
daughter. Like I felt like my son literally needed me. Like my daughter, like of course she needed me, of course. But I felt like my son, he didn't even care about the father that much. He just wanted me. And I'm just like, I felt like a superstar with him. Like my mama's here, get me up. Y'all know where I want to go. And I'm like, I love that. Like I love that
Mm-hmm.
feeling. He was definitely a mama's boy. He definitely like I don't know. I'm like it was a different flow with him, a different energy. But it was
Mm-hmm.
definitely difficult because now I'm like I felt like I had twins.
Yeah.
So definitely I and I say this all the time because I always hear like moms like, oh, I just want to have my babies back to back. I'm like, it sounds good in theory. Believe me, I
Yeah.
didn't, mind you, this is not something I wanted for myself. However, as a person who experienced this, it's a lot. Because I was buying diapers, different sizes, wipes, different sizes, milk.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a lot.
Yeah.
So it's literally like having twins. I'm like, for me, I don't recommend it.
I want to rewind again because I forgot to ask the question because we were just talking. So with your first child, we didn't really go over postpartum. We went over postpartum a little bit, but a big part of postpartum, like we talked about earlier, is relationships. So how did that, having the baby and those hormones and everything affect your relationships,
Ooh,
whether it be with your family, your husband, friends,
ooh, good question,
whomever?
girl. Ooh, having the first, I think like when people like when you well for me when we decided to have our baby, right? It was like okay, this is how we're gonna raise it, and da 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 da. But it's different in practice. It's
Mm-hmm.
different, and it looks different when people are like sleep deprived. It's
Yes.
different when people are working and another person isn't working. It looks different when your support systems. For us, it was a very difficult time transitioning from relationship stuff to baby stuff and how we're
Mm-hmm.
figuring this out as parents, and what worked for one parent didn't work for another parent. So we got into these battles of this is how you're supposed to do it, and you're doing it wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And oh, you're spinning for me. The issues that were expressed to me was that, oh, you care only about the baby, you don't care about me. You're giving attention to the
Mm-hmm.
baby, but not about me. And I'm just like, listen, first of all, I feel and I felt like a cow because I was breastfeeding. My body literally was on call all the time. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
touching me, I don't want to be touched because I'm all touched out.
Right.
Um, when when you're talking about physical touch and the fact that I got pregnant after, well, forget that part. But I was scared to get pregnant again. You understand
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but just the fact that now my attention was diverted to my baby, it was difficult for my husband to understand what that was for me. I didn't see it as, oh my goodness, I'm neglecting you and I'm just focused on the baby because that's what I care about. What I did not know that I know now is so like what I know now is what I did not know back then, and neither did he. All the hormones that were related to me breastfeeding, delivering baby, the oxytocin that I was releasing every time I breastfeed was making sure that I'm able to nurture and take care of my baby. Women were nurtured to, and wired to make sure that we're taking care of our baby. You understand what I mean? And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's something that he didn't know and I didn't know neither. So it's not, oh my goodness, the mother has the child and now, it's all about the child. Well, nature deemed it that way. Hormonally, it has nothing to do with an intentional, I'm going to neglect you.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not understanding how to like really step up in that was needed, right? If mom's attention is now diverted to the baby. So for me, that was one of our biggest struggles um, in terms of relationship and trying to understand how to hold on to us in a mix of being parents. So definitely, it definitely was very, very, very trying times. And I do remember talking to you earlier about it. And I know you mentioned it,
Yeah.
like you understand why people break up. Like
Yeah.
people think that when you have a baby that brings you closer. And I'm like, I understood that dynamic. I said, it
Yeah.
doesn't even make sense to me. It just puts a lot more pressure on that relationship. If your relationship was not solid and strong to begin with, it surely is going to collapse when the baby comes.
Yeah.
Even the solid foundation that you may have set in your relationship is still under pressure, especially if you guys do not understand what is needed and required, right?
Yeah.
Or you're taking values based on what you have seen your parents do. This is how my mother able to conduct herself after having a baby, and this is now what I expect you to do. And having those conversations and having those moments to intentionally set out time for your relationship that has nothing to do with the baby.
Right.
So
Yes.
I see that a lot.
Yeah. I was gonna ask. I'll wait till later with the doula part. But so, with the second child, do you think it was better because you had been through it before, or was it heightened because it was now two little people who were requiring your attention?
Ooh, I mean, I remember the first one, I guess, a little bit more distinctly than the second one. I think the second one we got a little better, even though we were arguing a lot about my baby's name, my son's name. So that was, I just had to let him have it, right? But I think for the second part, it still was definitely challenging because now we have two. So,
Yeah.
like, understanding, like, you're not going to have the same amount of time, right? And
Yeah.
knowing now I'm gonna need more support, and you're gonna have to take this on, and I'm gonna have to take this on. So I think it got a little better, but it still was very trying because
Yeah.
a lot of the times I was
Yeah.
by myself with both children, and I was random people use, and I mean random. I remember like walking down the street with my baby, and this guy, I don't even know him. I still right now, if I was to see him, wouldn't know who he was. He was like, "Those are your kids?" No, when I was pregnant with my son, you pregnant again? Or I'm literally pushing my baby. I was in McDonald's, right? And I remember some woman behind me was talking to her daughter. You don't want to be like her. Look at her. She got two kids. Da, 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 da. Because I look young, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, Miss, I got my bachelor's. Like, what are you talking about? Maybe
She don't
you
know
want
what she
a daughter.
talking about.
Maybe you want that,
Right.
right? So I had like a lot of like, and I felt uh, family, different feedback and responses from family, like, about the amount of kids I was having, especially now that I have four. I was hearing a lot of those comments, and I remember my mom. like spoke to me like, oh, this is what so and so said. And I'm like, you know what, mommy? I need you to stop right there. I need you to tell so and so if I'm not asking them for milk, diapers, or anything related to helping me take care of these kids that I'm bringing into the world, tell them to mind their business. She was like, Vicky,
Mm-hmm.
you serious? I'm like, yeah, mommy, I'm
Yes.
dead serious. People want to relay the message back. Okay, let's play
Yeah.
telephone, relay this message. So I'm just like at a point, and I definitely know, like, I dealt with this for the longest time of
Mm-hmm.
having multiple kids. Is that it came with a lot of judgment. It came with, oh my goodness, you guys don't watch TV. Oh my goodness, isn't that too much? And I'm like, the good Lord is not going to give me anything that I cannot handle.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that. And I already knew I wanted 4 kids. So I'm like, for everyone else, I feel like the opinions used to bother me more so. It's because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people had something to say that as if I was struggling. And I think that's probably the biggest battle that I faced when I was
Mm-hmm.
having all of my kids.
Mm-hmm. People, what's her name? Gabrielle Union. I don't know if I read books often, but like one of the chapters in her book is like "Get Out My Uterus," and
Mm,
it's so true because like, why do you care?
mm,
Like, you're not asking for help.
right,
Your children are healthy and well. I'm assuming.
right.
Like,
And they were.
back off. Like, who's not to say I wanted all these kids, and
Right,
you did want all these kids. Not all these kids. That's not bad. You know, like you did want these kids. So like, mind your business.
right.
It's none of your business.
Woo.
But and also the sorry, but she said something like you don't watch TV. They act like it don't take 2 seconds to make a kid.
Oh Lord,
Like,
tell me about it. And I'm like,
depending on the person, it's not going to take that long.
right. It
So
has nothing to do
I'm
with
doing other
the fact
things.
that these kids then came and I'm like, I heard all of these things and I'm telling you, it used to get me so upset. I'm
Mhm.
like, what am I like? Where's this judgment coming from? And then, like, of course, now that I'm I'm in this space of reflection, I'm like, no, that had nothing to do with me. That was all
That was
their
them.
insecurities.
Mhm.
Maybe part of their struggle, maybe things that they were being told that had nothing to do with you. So I'm thankful that I eventually got to this space. I used to get so bad. I used to be like I never even wanted to look young. I'm like, Vicky, it works out for you eventually. You look like you could be some of these siblings. All right, I'm fitting in now. So I'm like, I'm thankful for it because I'm like, I know for sure I don't judge any mama, and I try not
Mhm.
to because you never know their circumstance.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm not putting any more judgment in the air because I know the mama's judging herself. That's what we do. We want to know if we're good mamas. Are we doing this correctly? What could we have done better? So I try my best to tame my tongue so I'm not putting any garbage onto anyone else or projection onto
Mhm.
anyone else.
Okay. Yes. And then the fact I'm gonna move on after this because we can talk about this on that. But I'm assuming like I feel like most of those comments come from people you know, and then it's like if you care about me, why are you telling me like why are you saying these negative things? One, when I'm going through postpartum, one in general, but then two, when you know I'm raising 2 kids that comes with a lot of hormones, I'm probably sleep deprived. All these things are going on. So why are you trying to add other stresses to my life? And granted, they probably just think they're being funny, but you too old to not know
Come on.
when to shut up.
That's the
So
key. You too old to not know. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Especially if you've been there before. But I think sometimes people just continue the cycle of needing something to say just to have a
Mhm.
conversation and recycling this trauma, this hurt, this negativity that, the gossip. They just
Yeah.
have that cycle and I'm just like I'm like I couldn't. And I just had to tell my mama, please let them know, mama. Next time you speak to them, let them know. I said, out of my mouth,
Yeah.
this is what I said. Mind your business.
Yeah. Like we good over here.
We
You're the
good.
one that has a problem
I
with
didn't
it.
even ask you for anything last time I
Yeah.
checked. Not even my mama I used to ask for anything.
Mhm.
But I think like having her as my mother really prepared me to step into this form of motherhood that I have right now. Because had
Mhm.
I not had that relationship and that bond with her, I would have mothered 100% different. So I felt very secure in entering this journey with her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when she was here by my side, but with my third baby, now my first two, I yeah,
Hold on, sorry. Before we get into that, did you have the same doctor for both?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
Let me
all
give
right,
you let me give you the for all of my births, I had the same exact doctor.
okay.
And
Can I ask a question?
yeah,
Why didn't you leave him
the, the,
or her or whoever?
but let me tell you, that's a good question. The reason why I even had him is because he was my mom's OBGYN.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first one I
He was
had
passed down.
my first gynecological exam and everything. And if I felt like if she trusted him, I should trust him too.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really, I don't know. I felt like I had this blind trust. He helped me with my first two. He helped me with this one. He helped my mama with my sister.
Mm-hmm.
He probably helped her with my younger brother too. So it was like this history there for me. So I
Mm-hmm.
was loyal to the history, but it wasn't really loyal to my experience.
All right. Okay. Proceed. I knew I should have laid you down. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
All right. Yes, that makes sense. And then just, um, I had someone tell me that before. Like they always heard that a certain demographic were good doctors, so that's why they stayed with the doctor, even though they had bad experiences with them. Shh, it's okay, Papa. All right. So if you could tell me about your third, your pregnancy, birthing experience, postpartum. I'm gonna mute my mic because he's going into it now. But yeah.
Well, my baby cakes, well, my third one, I definitely, um, I was in my first year of grad school. I finally made the transition from business to teaching, and I knew I was going to be a teacher. My first semester, I was pregnant with him. Um, I didn't really have any, uh, while during pregnancy, I had some morning sickness. And this was probably the first time I ever experienced morning sickness ever. So I had slight experience with morning sickness with him, but other than his pregnancy was fine. Um, I was eating pizza a lot. Maybe that's why my baby likes pizza now. Um, but I remember like I was working and I was going to school, and I'm like, I'm gonna take this week off because I think he was supposed to be born like December 20th during the week of the 20th. And I'm like, I'm gonna take off this last week of November. This is gonna be like my last week of work, and I'm gonna have time to like get my house in order, buy him everything he needs, and just me relax. I went to my weekly doctor's appointment that Friday. He was fine. The doctor said his head was down. Everything is good. I still have fluid. I was probably dilated maybe by like 1 centimeter at that time. And so the next day was Saturday. I was at school. I told my professor, this is my last day. So here's my assignments. I did everything beforehand. I left school, had pizza with the family like we normally do. And then I woke up on Sunday morning and I had like more fluid leaking. So my water never breaks during any of my pregnancies that I had so far. So I'm like, all right, I think it's time for me to go to the hospital. I'm gonna have my baby today. So we get to the hospital and they call the doctor. The doctor gets there and he tells me, same doctor that I had for all of these pregnancies, he tells me, and the same doctor I seen on Friday, my baby is not head down. My baby head is up. I said, that doesn't make sense. On Friday, 2 days ago, his head was down. If my baby made a whole full somersault, I would have felt that.
Yeah.
As big as he was, I would have felt him move in a big way. He did not move. His head is down. They sent my husband home. He was home soon as he got home, we started playing a game. I'm in the hospital. They said they're gonna monitor me for an hour and probably release me, or for a few hours. I called him back. I said, I'm having this baby today. You need to come now. So he came. He came back,
Manifestation queen.
and like 5 to 10 minutes later, I'm like, I gotta push.
Mm-hmm.
So it was no time for no epidural, no time for anything. I pushed my baby out in 3 pushes. What was my baby head down? Like, come on. My baby was and
Why would he say that?
I listen. This is what that like. This is the birthing story that still confuses me today. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it legit doesn't make sense. You was about to send me home. I would have probably had my baby at home.
Yeah. If
Um,
he made it home.
I made it home because if my husband was driving, I would have made it home on time. So literally 3 pushes and my baby was clean out. And after his delivery and birth, I felt completely like I felt like superwoman. I felt
Mm-hmm.
amazing. I felt like I could accomplish anything that I ever wanted to accomplish in this world. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, I actually had a natural vaginal birth, right? Even though my first two I had epidurals.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my goodness. Once, and I was already thinking about the next one. I'm like, if I have that next one, I'm having my baby natural. Ain't no one gonna stop me. And I felt like on top of the world. So
Mm-hmm.
with even that birthing experience, it was a lot to me empowering for me. Like I'm like, oh my goodness, thank God that it happened this way because I probably would have got another epidural again.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was treated better at this hospital than I was with my first two pregnancies. And with my first two pregnancies, I had nurses who were all black.
Mm-hmm.
My doctor, he was Asian, but my nurses and those well, my first two experiences were black, but they were very, to me, harsh,
Mm-hmm.
very rough. Like, oh, like this was another day, another, another hour doing the same thing.
Right.
Like not so much. Like I remember like waiting for care. Like they would not come quickly. They'll take their time, and
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes you felt the energy. It was like it was an attitude there.
Mm-hmm.
And this hospital, most majority of the nurses and the staff, they were white. And I had a better birthing experience there, and I thought that was very interesting. Um, at least this birthing story.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely felt cared for. They were very accommodating to me. They were very, very helpful. Do you need this? I'm gonna give you extra this. This is what we can help you do, and I just felt really taken care of there. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I had black nurses, and I didn't have the same feeling.
Right.
So I just really thought that was interesting. But postpartum for that time, I had my 6 weeks, right? Because I had to go back
Mm-hmm.
to work. But I really bonded with my baby because I remember the time that I didn't have with my daughter, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I get 6 weeks at least. Let
Right.
me let me bond with my baby, and that was that was a pretty smoother transition. I had my father really there and his grandmother really there to support me and picking up the kids, dropping them off. So I didn't feel like I had to do everything by myself. I definitely
Mm-hmm.
had a village available and there for me. I remember like after I gave birth to him, I was supposed to go to like a party like a week after. And I told my mom, I don't want to bring my baby to the party. I'm gonna let you watch him. And then I was running too late. You know how it is getting babies together and yourself
Yes.
together. And my mother was like so upset. She was like so upset that I was not bringing her baby. I'm like, mommy, come on,
Mm-hmm.
like, But I definitely had a village. It was surrounded by love. And even when it was time for me to go back to work, it's always hard for me to transition away from my baby or separate, but it felt a little bit better because my baby was going to my mom. And I knew how my mom was going to be able to take care of him. So I felt a level of ease there that even though I didn't want to be separated from my baby, I knew that my mom was going to take care of him. So I had not a doubt in my mind that he was in good hands. I would call her like 6 times a day. Hey, mama, he ate? What he doing? All right, put my baby on the phone. Let him know. Let him know mommy's thinking about you, Pa. Are you speaking to my baby? Like it was, it was definitely a better experience. Um, I had a pump
Mhm.
at work, but it wasn't really helpful. I forgot to mention that during, well, all of my pregnancies, I had to supplement with formula. So I
Mhm.
breastfed and formula, and it was the work that I was doing wasn't really con- helpful for a breastfeeding mom, even though the program was a parenting program.
Of course, the irony of it all.
So it was definitely probably one of the better experiences postpartum, even though I didn't get to stay at home. But
Yeah.
I felt like I started to get a hang of this whole parenting journey. And I was in this program that I was learning so much about responding to baby signals, and I was teaching parents this. So I was able to implement that in my own practice. I was reading to my baby, I was singing to him. Like I was on point with him, and I'm like, I think this is why my baby, he's on point now. Um, but it was definitely a better experience postpartum for sure,
Mhm.
and definitely, even though I had that, the same doctor tell me my baby wasn't head down. Like it was a good experience for me because I'm like, I know, and I knew I was going to
Mhm.
birth my baby. So
Yeah.
yeah, I could have said whatever. I know my baby was coming today. So his and all of my labors really never lasted long. I was probably
Mhm.
in labor for like 6 hours, maybe.
Two things. Two things. Because I'm gonna forget. Hold on. Let me Okay. Okay. I'll start with that one. So I know in the beginning you said you've always wanted to be a mother and always envisioned it. So wanting to be a mother and then actually becoming a mother. What I guess did you expect what came with it? Because we always like. I feel like what we see of motherhood is not what motherhood is.
Mm.
So you know what I mean?
I get it. I get what you mean. I feel like, and I think for sure all my life I've been preparing to be a mother. Don't ask me why. I just have. Ever since I got a baby doll, like I knew I was gonna be a mom. And when
Mhm.
I actually was a mom, I felt like, dang, yeah, for sure it's hard, right? It's not easy, especially when you're sleep deprived, especially when you wanted to do the best all the time. It's definitely a struggle. But for me, I think my something that I personally did was I kind of already had in my brain what a mother was and how a
Mhm.
mother should parent and how a mother should dress. I had everything like in my head. So I was holding myself up to that standard and also like also to the standard the mother I had. Like what will my
Mhm.
mama do? So a lot of that, those notions I had to like deconstruct too and be like, you know what, that was my image that I put in my own head. No one said every mother need to do this, right? And I shouldn't
Mhm.
be holding myself up to those standards that honestly are not any human can keep up with. So I think as I continue to parent even now, even though my babies are not babies, I'm
Mhm.
learning that now. Like I need to show up how I am, not as
Yeah.
this image of what a mother is and what a mother's supposed to do. So mothering is hard, but honestly, it's the best job, the best role, the best thing that
Mhm.
I I always wanted. And I knew it
Yes.
would feel like this for me. And I knew that this would be like one of my top priorities. But yeah, I mean, it's not gonna be all glitz and glamour. And I knew, and I knew I didn't care about how I looked, right? So I could go outside with my garment on and have no problem,
Yes.
right? I was not like, oh, I got to be put together. No, I'm a mama. This is how
Hmm.
mamas look sometimes.
As
And
long as
sometimes
my
I
kid
don't
got
check it out.
clothes on, as long as my kid looks presentable, I'm
Right,
okay.
right, right,
Right.
right. My baby ate. We good. All right. But
Right.
other than that, it was just I feel like the image that I held for myself was
Hmm.
probably a little too high.
Hmm.
And I'm like, you're doing the best that you could. And I'm always in reflective mode. If I'm not in reflective mode about any other role that I have, I'm
Hmm.
always in reflective mode about my mothering. And am I gonna damage my child? Am I doing something too much? Am I doing too
Hmm.
little? Am I showing up in the best way? How do they need to see me as a human?
Right.
Right? Can I apologize when I make a mistake? Can I say something and do it? Because I
Hmm.
remember me, a testy child, like, Mama, you said this, but why I don't see you doing it?
Right.
So I needed to make sure that the things I'm telling my children, or will tell my children eventually, is something that I'm able to kind of walk them through because I did it already.
Right.
So,
Makes sense.
girl, I love
He was
it.
prepared.
Listen, I think in my brain, I'm like, I don't know. I just knew I was going to be a mama.
Hmm.
So in my brain, everything I'm doing is to prepare for my role as a mother. So me taking care of my Cabbage Patch babies, right?
Girl.
My brother taking care of them too. Like, I'm gonna throw it down. Like, this is what I'm gonna do. And when I get older, me and my baby's going to the zoo and the aquarium, and then we're gonna go to Disney World. And like, I had so much like plans for them. So for me, it was just like, all right, Vicky, it may look a little different now.
Hmm.
You got three boys. I That's something that I did not envision. I did not envision me having three boys. In my eyes, what I asked the good Lord for was two boys and two girls. And the good Lord said, you gonna get what you get, Vicky.
All right.
So I got three boys and one girl. So I was not ready for being a complete boy mom. That's for sure. Like, that's a little different for me.
Yes, I'm sure. Yeah, three boys is a lot.
Listen,
I'm sure it's a lot going on. What you
and then
doing, Bobby?
honestly, like, mothering boys have taught me like complete softness. You would
Hmm.
think that having a girl would teach us softness. My boys have taught me softness, that they need nurturing, that they need care, that they need
Hmm.
that soft voice sometimes. They don't get it all the time, but when they need it, they get it.
And some days they just they try.
Oh, they try, but I realized, like, boys are not, oh my goodness, they have to be tough. They can't cry.
Right.
I'm like, no. Like, my babies can cry, but tell me why you crying.
Exactly.
Let's see how we can get to this resolution. How can I help you? Um, and I just really had an appreciation for them. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, they're really, really dope people. Um, and my boys are very sensitive and very in tune with their emotions. So I really am in awe. I'm like, oh snap! I didn't know being a boy mom was going to take me here, but it did.
It takes you there. Yeah. Yeah. Two things again. I definitely agree with like. I feel like people are really hard on boys, and it's just like, listen, they have feelings too,
Yes, they do.
and you just respect them. Come again? What's that sound? It's your ring sounds, I think. Um, and then this is a real rewind. You mentioned. I'm glad you mentioned like that at the first hospital where you had the two babies that the women were black,
Hmm.
because even for myself when I had him, I was thinking if I find a black person, I'll be fine, and
Mm.
that's not always the case because
Mm.
sometimes they ain't fine. But was right now? Go with daddy, baby. Yeah, baby. You can come back in a little bit. Can you at least put a shirt on? I'm recording a video.
Yeah.
You're in the chair.
Come on, bro.
Go with daddy, baby. I'll be out in a little bit.
Come on.
Can you go put a shirt on, at least? Okay. Rah. Can you get him, Jamal? Because you ain't even good.
I wasn't trying.
I'm going to cut it up. Yeah, you're fine. It's okay.
Come on.
Don't get, he looked at me like, how dare
See,
you?
the boys want to be next to the mama. I know how it is.
Right.
I know.
But, sorry. What were you about to say? Yeah. Just because they're black doesn't always mean they're a great person, which,
Woo!
you know, sucks. But that was definitely my viewpoint going into pregnancy. Like, as long as I find a black person, I should be in good hands.
Mm. But that's not necessarily true, because if they're in the same program, following the same system that was not meant for us to begin with, doesn't that doesn't equate to, oh, I'm gonna be here for my black sister.
Right.
It doesn't equate to that. It equates to, I'm gonna do my job, and my job encompasses this, and that. You know what I mean? So I have seen that on multiple fronts. So I'm like, I care about the energy that you emit, but the skin color doesn't really mean too much to me.
Sorry, he started crying. All right. So last pregnancy or last baby, the pregnancy, birthing story, the good stuff.
My baby, Clarky. Okay, so that was my last pregnancy. Parker is my last pregnancy. It was definitely a very interesting, challenging pregnancy for me. Not in the typical ways of having like any morning sickness or any elements of that. But when I first found out I was pregnant with him, I also found out that my mama was passing. She had stage 4 cancer. So I was literally in the hospitals in my last semester doing my work, going back and forth, spending time a lot with her,
Yeah.
and not wanting her to know I was pregnant. Even though she asked me one day, and I just could not bring it to
Yeah.
myself to like say it, because I know my mama. Like, I didn't want her to like fight anymore, you know? So literally, it was a very turbulent pregnancy because I was crying almost every single day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry for crying. Baby, please don't come outside. Da-da-da. Like, I was going back and forth in my head. I'm like, Lord, just forgive me. I lost my mama. I don't want my baby to be affected by my mood, because I'm just grieving. So that was tough, because of that emotional um trauma that I was experiencing. I was
Right.
grieving my mama, and my mama was like the closest person to me. So he was born during the same month as my first daughter, in March. My baby was supposed to be born in April, the middle of April, I think, or the first 2 weeks of April. Um, had the same thing. I said, all right, I'm gonna plan a little bit further. So
Every
I'm not gonna
time.
get close to my due date. I'm gonna take off at least a week before that time, so I can have time to settle in, mind my business, and get my house in order. So I remember one day, I used to like drive and pick up my kids. I don't know where we was coming from, but we was in a parking lot, and my youngest baby at the time, Jeremiah, he used to always run, and I had a semi-enclosed parking lot except for the way in which the cars enter. So he used to always run, and I used to always call him, and he'll come back. That week that I had before I gave birth to Parker, that's 2 days before that. This is when that incident happened. So Jeremiah took off running like he normally does. And this time I'm calling him and he's not stopping. So I know, when he's about where the cars enter, it's the street. And there was no stop signs. There's no yield signs. There's no traffic stoplights. So, and I know cars like to move through that portion rather fast. So I literally told older too. I said, please stay here. And I took off running. Mind you, I'm a good 37 weeks pregnant and I'm taking off to get my baby. So he runs into the street and I'm yelling. People are looking at me. No one
Mm-hmm.
does anything. I'm still running. I go and get him, and like the school bus is like this far away from him. And I'm like, in my brain, I said, I cannot imagine myself losing my child in my face. I can't even like
Mm-hmm.
conceptualize that. So I got my baby and and I'm limping now,
Mm-hmm.
limping to the sidewalk, and this old lady, she must have been, I ain't gonna lie, 80 something years old. She's like, do you need help? That older lady helped me upstairs to my building to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And I had trouble walking. So I had this pain that I never felt before. So I called my husband. I said, you need to, as soon as we get home, we need to go to the hospital. I just want to make sure everything is okay. Went to the hospital. They said everything was fine with the baby. They said I may need to walk with a little cane. So I had a little cane. But this pain was still not going away. Like I really had a hard time sleeping. I really had a hard time walking. Like I was literally like I have no clue what that pain was, but I must have overstretched something when I completely just couldn't walk.
Right.
So the doctor said, if anything, if this pain is still persisting, let's induce you. I said, you know what? That may not be a bad idea, right? So he said, you know what? A spot opened up for this Friday. No, he gave me like 2 days. So I chose the 28th, which
Mm-hmm.
is my birthday is August 28th. I said, oh, it'd be cool. My baby is born on March 28th.
Is that my headset? I think my headset about to die.
So,
But I'll let if it dies, I'll just wave or something and let you know because
okay.
he's on my chest right now. So go ahead.
So I chose that day. He said to come in. So I came in 7 o'clock in the morning, couldn't eat anything. They got me hooked on to the Pitocin,
Mm-hmm.
and those contractions were different.
Say.
They were real different, right? It was a lot more intense. It was a lot more unbearable at times. But I already consciously said I am not going to get an epidural. That's not even an option
Mm-hmm.
because I know what I did my third. So I had a beautiful nurse, very accommodating, very helpful. She said, you've been here before. You know what it feels like. You know when it's time to call us back.
Mm-hmm.
So she went on break, and another nurse came in. And that nurse, by the time that nurse came in, I was telling her, I need to push. And she's like, no, you were only 3 centimeters when the doctor last checked you. It's impossible that you're ready to push right now. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. It's impossible that you need to push right now. And I'm like, I know what it feels like to push. This is
Yeah.
not my first time. This is not my second. This is not even my third. This is my fourth time.
Yeah.
So I told my husband, I said, listen, I don't want this lady back here at all. You need to call someone else. You need to go get the doctor. Tell him I'm ready to go now.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first time that I never even heard this before, but I was so uncomfortable with me pushing without my doctor that I was trying to hold my baby back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know, and I can't describe how that felt like, but I was trying to hold him back until the doctor came. Because in my mind, the baby can't come unless the doctor is here,
Mm-hmm.
right? So my doctor was in the hospital giving someone a C-section,
Yeah.
sewing them back up.
How long did you hold the baby?
So he finally came, and then my old nurse came back from her lunch.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like, you ready? And I'm like, yeah. She said, I know you're ready. You did this. You done this before.
Mm-hmm.
Soon as they were, soon as they were there, it literally probably took 2 to 3 pushes to get him out.
He was like, "Why you holding
And
me in here, mommy?"
it, listen, it was so crazy to me that I had this woman telling me, "No, you're not ready
Right.
because you're only 3 centimeters by the time." I'm like, "What?" And I gave birth to him nice and healthy. He was a little bit like every time I watch his video of when I'm first holding him,
Mm-hmm.
I notice like he's a little out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, it must have been like knowing what I know now. I'm like, it must have been the effect of the pitocin because I didn't have an epidural.
Right.
So he was a little out of it, dealing with those intense contractions. And I was like, all I remember is just being extremely hungry. Girl, I had legit 4 meals right after birth. They asked me, they said, "Do you want to breastfeed him?" And this is the only time that I said no. This is the only time I said no. I felt so depleted
Mm-hmm.
that and undernourished that I could not even think about breast putting this baby and getting the strength to put on my breast when I'm starving.
Mm-hmm.
So I had legit 4 meals. My doctor was like, "Yo, you still hungry?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm hungry." So I had my fourth meal. They cleaned me up. The pain immediately. I went to the bathroom, and that's when I realized that pain was gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, "Thank God." I don't feel no pain. I felt like refreshed, rejuvenated at that time. Then I had a friend who worked at that hospital, and she delivered me a nice meal that I wanted, and I'm
So
like,
5 meals.
so I had my fifth meal, and I was just so happy. I felt so taken care of,
Mm-hmm.
food wise, because for me, like I feel taken care of when someone's feeding me. So
I
the fact
understand
that
that.
that happened, it was a nice transition. When I got home, my brother was able to like take care of my other three for me. Him and his fiance took off of work just to support that. So I was so thankful that they were with their uncle and had a time. Um, so
Mm-hmm.
even after that experience, I also had 6 weeks again.
Mm-hmm.
6 weeks to bond with my baby and get ready. But um, my mother in law was very instrumental in helping me pick up kids from school, take kids to school, drop them to me. And then I had their aunt, right? My sister in law really step up and help me take care of him. So I felt like I had a village, but still, I always felt that separation from my baby was always hard for me. So I already envisioned what that was going to be like for me. Um, it was hard, but as always, I rushed home to my baby after work, and went back to the normal hustle and bustle of life, taking care of 4 kids now,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that, oh snap, even when the baby's sleeping, these other kids are not sleeping. And I'm like this all day. Shh, 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 come wake
Mm-hmm.
the baby up. So that, as I increased in my family size, my sleep never recuperated from the first, and that's
Please
one
tell
thing.
me you get sleep now. Give me some hope.
Yes, exactly.
I'm
And
about to
like
say.
you will never, and I tell every client, every person I know, I'm like, if you sleeping during your pregnancy, don't feel bad. You need all of it. Okay, you need a surplus of sleep. Okay, because you're never gonna sleep the same, even when your babies are mine are 15, 13, 9, and 11. I
Mm-hmm.
still can't take a nap.
Why you tell me that?
I'm sorry. My nervous system is not the same. It's just like, oh my goodness, is someone gonna do something? Like I'm like, this is so. That's the one thing about parenting that they don't tell you. Cause
Mm-hmm.
I'm a sleeper. I used to sleep in late, and
Me
I'm
too.
like, oh man, I gotta get up early. Come on, baby's crying to get. Lord help us. So yeah, that was very interesting.
Okay. So with your birth, let's take off the doula hat. Let's act like you don't have your doula knowledge and experiences. With your experiences going through birth and your journey into motherhood, what is one piece of advice you would give a mother, or someone's pregnant, someone's trying to get pregnant, about this journey in general?
It's so much to say. But one of the things I can say is definitely, I personally, I'm like, even if I give birth again, I'm getting me a doula, right? Someone who can advocate for me on the spot. My partner was there for all of my children's birth. And I legit had to still tell him what to say. And I'm like, that's not too helpful because now I'm out of my zone of managing my contractions, right? Get a doula, someone who can advocate for you and hold space for you. Make sure you have a supportive provider, whether that's a midwife or OBGYN, someone who listens to what your preferences are, helps to walk through any tests or medical procedures that they want to suggest, right? Because a lot of things were suggested to me in that moment, and it was like, trust me, I did this before. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's not enough, right? Also, educate yourself on what are your rights, right? I didn't know I had a right to say no to, for example, like IV, the cervical exams, right? To the episiotomy. I didn't know I had, it's like, make sure you know your rights, know exactly what your responsibilities are, what your medical practitioner's responsibilities are. And most of all, trust yourself, trust your instincts. Even if you haven't went through this birthing or a birthing experience before, you literally know what's right for you, what feels right for you. You may not have the words to justify your reason why you're saying yes or no or anything, but your body, and I 100% will say, listen to yourself. No one is the expert, not the doctor, not the doula. You are the expert in your experience. Oof.
Okay. So that's it for this episode, guys. Thank you, Victoria, for telling us your birthing stories. Victoria will be next week's, of course, will be next week's episode as well, telling us about her doula experiences. You can listen to us wherever you listen to us right now. So basically, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. If you would like to tell your story, or if you're a birth worker who would like to come on as well, feel free to DM me or fill out the form in the description. But thank you for listening, and hopefully you will listen again next week.